A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the webinar on input tax credit and how to avail it under GST. So here's the title of the webinar. I'll probably do some housekeeping instructions in the next 5 minutes till some people join, and we'll just start with the basics for now. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Tilak. I'm part of the marketing team at Avalara, and I'm happy to introduce to our keynote speakers today, Chandrasekhar Ramaswamy and Manas Joshi. Audience, you have your, what you can see is more like a mix of boxes. On the left, you have a media player, which is probably the face of the presenter. Then in the middle, you have slides. Right side, if you enlarge the square icon, it's a mix of the speaker bios. So Manas and Chandrasekhar, if you want to know more about them, you have their email IDs, their LinkedIn profiles, as well as their photos and names. So you get to see about them. And then on the left side, you have the media player and the Q&A. Q&A is where you usually type the questions. If you have any, we would love to answer that in the last 10-15 minutes of the webinar. So we'll make it like this. First 30-40 minutes, we'll give it to Manas and Chandrasekhar to talk about input tax credit, how to claim it, and how does Avalara help you with that. And then we'll take up the Q&A in the last 15 minutes. Also in the portal, as you can see on the right side, you have a contact us window. So in case, okay. So in case you have any queries which you want to take up later, you can always email us. So, and then you also have the related content in the middle lower side of the portal. So you can read the resources or you can see the videos which we have placed. So yeah, that should be fine. So feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to take it up in the last 15 minutes. Also, very importantly, you are on mute mode. So the best would be to either just ask us a question in the Q&A portal or email us for any queries. So let's jump to the agenda for today. Okay, so we'll be covering the following pointers in the next 30-40 minutes, followed by the question answer session. The fundamentals of input tax credit. We'll talk about the eligibility of ITC. We'll also try to understand the practical issues in the reconciliation of ITC as per the books and the GSTR 2A. And we'll take up your questions in the last 15 minutes. We also have our email IDs, phone numbers, and the website listed here. So in case you have anything, feel free to reach us out anytime. Okay, so let's jump to the speakers. So joining us today are two excellent speakers. Both are experts in the field. Manas Joshi. Manas is a renowned GST consultant with more than 16 years of experience in the indirect taxation space. Manas is also an active member of the GST committees of organizations like MCCI and CII. And Manas has conducted more than 300 seminars and webinars on GST rules and regulations. Also, Manas is joined by our very own Chandrasekhar Ramaswamy. We call him Vicky. Vicky is the Director of Product Management at Avalara. Chandrasekhar, he has more than 16 years of experience in product management, consulting, and entrepreneurship. He has worked in different industries such as logistics, retail, and e-commerce, finally landing with us. Okay, we have a query from Ashalata Menon that the audio is breaking. Ashalata, now I hope it's fine. Do let us know if you're able to hear us. Okay, so quickly a note about the company for the audience who are joining us for the first time. Avalara is a global tax technology leader, and we help businesses of all size get their tax compliance right. So for the stats, you can refer to the slide. We have been in operation since 2004 in the United States, and in India, we started around 2006. basically to help companies with their tax solutions at every point in their growth. So this involves, say, automating your GST compliance, selling cross borders, expanding to new geographies, as well as mergers and acquisition. So every year we have been processing billions of indirect tax transactions, and we file more than 1 million tax returns and other compliance documents. So if I have to say boil it down to one statement, I would say that Avalara makes taxes less taxing, and we also have a lot of fun in this process. Also, a quick mention about our cross-border solutions. If you're trading overseas, this requires a lot of complicated compliance requirements. So there are different policy changes, tax rates, and deadlines for various jurisdictions. So in case you want to avoid the penalties and save on profits without facing any interruptions, you can use our cross-border solution. Basically, it comprises of two offerings, which is the item classification as well as the AvaTax cross-border. So item classification automates the complex processes of, say, assigning the products to proper country-specific organized systems, enabling the e-retailers to classify any consumer product to any country easily. And the cross-border is basically allowing the online sellers to calculate the duties and import taxes in real time, while seamlessly populating cross-border taxes into online shopping cart experiences. So this creates a perfect experience for your customers. So with Avalara, you can ensure correct classification of products along with the relevant tariff codes, maintain complete control of your e-commerce technologies, enhance customer experience, and also simplify your compliance process through a unified tax portal. So we have been working with several Indian companies on these solutions, and you can reach out to know more about from the details provided. I will now request our first speaker for today, the GST expert, Manas Joshi, to please take it from here.
Yes, thank you, Tilak. And
Thanks,
hello,
Manas.
everyone. So as Tilak explained, the agenda is to discuss something about concept of input tax credit, which is not new, definitely. So I will just touch the concept, which will be followed by the conditions, which are mentioned in section 16, subsection 2. Then it will be followed by the eligibility criteria, which are mentioned in section 17, subsection 5. And also I share some of my experiences while filing returns, conducting audits, discussing with the officers. And lastly, but not the least, the practical aspects regarding the reconciliation of input tax credit as per GSTR 2A and as per GSTR 3B. And the fundamental question is whether we should consider or refer GSTR 2A or GSTR 2B. Because as you can see on the Twitter handle or as per the clarification issued by the government, they insist to refer to GSTR 2B. So here I remember one famous dialogue of William Shakespeare, that is, to be or not to be, that is the question. So I guess the same question which we are facing right now is whether to be or not to be. So whether it is GSTR 2B or whether it is GSTR 2A, which we should refer. So I will discuss that part also, and then it will be followed by question answers. So as Tilak mentioned, if you have any question regarding input tax credit, please do mention in the chat box. We will be happy to answer all your questions. So to begin with, the concept of input tax credit, it is not new. It is there since pre-GST era. If as far as my knowledge goes, it started in 1986. We call it as MODVAT, then SENVAT, then input tax credit, and now it is input tax credit on GST part. So basically, when you purchase some goods and services, whatever GST charged by the supplier, you are claiming that credit, and you are using that credit towards output liability of GST. That's a simple concept of input tax credit. Now, I just want to discuss with the conditions. Now, these conditions, many of you are aware because you might be working in GST department. You might be complying on monthly basis. So practically, you will be knowing these conditions. So I'm just going to touch these conditions with some practical experiences which we have faced. So as per section 16, if you want to claim input tax rate, first you have to have some documentary evidences, and that document is debit note or any other duty paying document. So once you have invoice, you can avail the credit. You should receive the goods and services. So these two are the common things which is observed in almost all the companies. Third one, that is GST charged by the supplier. He has made payment to the government, and unfortunately, when we comply in GST, when I discuss with the officers, what I observe that conditions are satisfied. That is, we have input tax credit invoice, we have received the goods or services, but we are not aware whether the GST which is charged by the supplier paid to the government or not. Now you can see in GSTR 2A and GSTR 2B that whether 3B has been filed or not. But again, this is a fundamental question that if the supplier has not paid GST, are we eligible to claim input tax credit? This is the third condition in section 16 subsection 2, so we have to observe this condition. Now, I just want to share one writ petition which is filed before the Honorable Madras High Court, and I have seen some rumors about this particular decision. So I just wanted to share that particular case. It's a very simple case that the writ petition is filed on the ground that if the supplier has not paid GST to the government, then credit should be allowed. It is based on the fundamental principle, the fundamental right of any businessman. And the outcome, there is no final decision yet. However, the Madras High Court has issued notice to the government to justify this particular provision. So there might be a possibility that in near future, this particular condition may be treated as ultra vires to the law. However, as of now, this is what the condition is. So we have to follow this condition. And a fourth condition as per subsection 2 is supplier has furnished the return. Now return means GSTR 3B. It is not GSTR 1, which means he has paid the GST to the government. So these are the main four conditions which we have to follow for claiming credit. There are two more conditions which are mentioned in the provision, and the first one is payment has to be made within 180 days from the date of invoice. Now here I just want to spend some more time. When I discuss with my clients, when I discuss with the officers, when I discuss in various seminars and webinars, what I understand that if any company wants to claim input tax credit, they normally refer first 2 or 3 conditions. However, this condition, that is payment has to be made within 180 days, is not generally followed because it is not that easy to keep the track. But unfortunately, this is the 5th condition which you have to follow. So I was discussing with one of the Joint Commissioners GST in my personal hearing, and after my personal hearing, I was discussing with him on informal talk, and I just asked him a question. So what is your view, how the officers are going to discuss, or how the officers are going to check whether payment has already made within 180 days or not? Because if I represent my client, if I were to represent the industry, job. And you are aware about that. The Honorable Joint Commissioner, he smiled and he said, Manas, it's very easy for us. When my officer will visit the company premises, visit the assessee premises, they are going to ask for tax credit sheet. So in the Excel sheet, there will be many columns, like for example, invoice date, name of the supplier GST number, the nature of goods and services, HSN code and GST amount, etc. Here, my officers will ask the assessee to add one more column, that is date of payment. And then the job of my officer will become very simple. In next column, he will just add one formula, that is date of payment minus date of invoice. If it is more than 180 days, there will be interest impact. If there is no mention in the date of payment, then definitely my officers will ask the assessee to reverse input tax credit. So now, as you know, the officers have started conducting GST audits and assessments, and this issue will pop up very soon. So probably to take some initiative, to take some initiate action, I would suggest if we have input tax credit register in Excel sheet, just maintain the track of date of payment. I know it's not that easy, but if we do not maintain, then officer may ask to reverse the credit. And then the last one is no credit shall be allowed in respect of an invoice after filing of GSTR 3B for September of the next year, which means now currently we are in the financial year 2021-22. So if any invoice date or debit note date is pertaining to the financial year 2020-21, then that credit you can claim up to September 2021. Thereafter, you cannot claim legally, unfortunately. Now I remember I was discussing this issue with one of my friends, and after discussion, I thought let's write an article on this particular issue and discuss the practical aspects and legal aspect. So I written an article which is published on TaxGuru website. So the article name suggests that a credit for the last financial year can be claimed after September. The answer is yes. Now I won't discuss in detail about the article. If you want to go through, you can go to Google or type my name and TaxGuru. So you can go to that particular link and you can go to the article. However, the only point I want to highlight over here is this restriction is for availment of fresh credit and not for the availment of recredit. So it can be suggested that if any invoice is pertaining to 2021 and we have not claimed credit till now, just because those invoices are not reflected in GSTR 2A, and therefore we have kept those invoices on hold. And in the month of September also, if the supplier has not filed his return, then we have no option but to expense it off. So what I would suggest, legally, you can claim the credit. Those invoices are not reflected in GSTR 2A. Still, you can claim the credit in September 3B specifically, and in the same return, you may reverse the credit. So which means you have availed fresh credit before September. So this condition is satisfied, and you have reversed the credit. So again, there is no question to use this particular credit. And in near future, as and when the supplier file his GSTR 1 and claim the credit, and this credit will be treated as recredit. And in case of free credit, there is no time restriction. Now this, whatever I'm saying right now, is very well supported by various decisions of Honorable Tribunal in excise and service tax regime, and also a circular issued by the government. So this is very well supported by those circulars and decisions. Now, though we are in GST, law has remained the same. So the principle can be applied in GST also. The other side also, if I want to contest from government perspective, I will have some different points. I won't be discussing right now, but this you can follow if there is a such situation. Now comes the eligibility of input tax credit. Now, when I discuss in my webinars and seminars regarding, and when I take classes on GST part, and when I ask the question regarding how you claim credit. So first of all, normally the answer which I received is make sure that invoice is received, goods and services are received, and this credit is not in negative list or block credit. That is section 17 subsection 5. However, we need to refer the provisions of section 16 also, which says that input tax credit on all goods and services are allowed which are used in the course of business or furtherance of business. And I guess in near future, the majority of litigation will be based on section 16, that is whether the goods and services are used in the course of business or furtherance of business or not. At present, we are following the provisions of section 17 subsection 5, that is negative list or block credit. But we need to see section 16 also. Now I will discuss first I will discuss the negative list, and then I take some practical issues with the legal aspect. So section 17 subsection 5 gives a list of services and goods on which credit is not allowed, irrespective of the fact that whether these goods or services are used in the course of business or not. Even if they are used in the course of business, still input tax credit is not allowed. So first one you can see is motor vehicle, whose seating capacity is 13 passengers or less, and its related expenses. Now, for example, if a company purchases some vehicle, that is maybe a car whose seating capacity is 5 passengers, then obviously that credit is not eligible. But at the same time, if company has incurred expenditure towards insurance of that car, repairs and maintenance of that car, then credit is not allowed. Thus, if a company has purchased vehicle for employee transport and seating capacity is more than 13 passengers, then credit is allowed. Even if such vehicle is received or company is aware that received that vehicle on hire, on rental basis, still that credit is eligible just because the seating capacity is more than 13. Then food, beverages, outdoor catering, health services, credit is not allowed if it is not under any obligation, which means if food, beverages, outdoor catering, health service is required to be provided as per any law, then credit should be allowed. Now, for example, if a company is having a canteen facility, and if the strength of the employees and workers is more than 250, then as per section 46 of the Factories Act, such company is required to provide a canteen facility. So credit should be available just because it is obligatory as per some law. So likewise, if you have some health services, it doesn't mean that credit is not allowed. We should check whether it is obligation under any of the act to provide a health service or any insurance service. Then membership of club, health, fitness, it is not allowed. Rent a cab, life insurance, health insurance, it is not allowed. Now, when I talk about health insurance, the important question which I received in all my webinars since last 1 year is many companies have obtained or drawn the insurance policy for COVID-19. And the insurance companies have charged GST. The question is, are they eligible to claim input tax credit? Now, fortunately, the answer is yes, because it is there was some GR issued by the central ministry where it was mandatory for the companies to provide this insurance coverage to the employees. Then comes construction of immovable property other than plant and machinery. So any construction credit is not allowed, as we know. Renovation, repairs of factory or office, credit is not allowed. However, if you have treated the renovation or repairs expenditure as a revenue expenditure, then you can claim credit. Next one is use of goods and services for personal consumption. Now this is very tricky, and take my words, in near future there will be so many litigations on any goods and services which are used for personal consumption. This is because the term personal consumption is not defined anywhere in the law. And I had lot of arguments with these GST officers at the time of some assessment or during our healthy discussions. I will share some of my practical experiences also, typically in my next slide or next to next slide, when I will be discussing about the input tax credit on mobile bills or internet dongle, which is the need of an hour right now. And the last one, that is goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, or disposed of by way of gift or free sample. So if you have purchased certain goods, and if those goods are lost, destroyed in fire or any accident, or just because of these goods are slow moving items, so your auditor has suggested to make a provision to write off, So here the important point is, if you make a provision to write off, no need to reverse credit. But if you actually write off the value of the goods, then only you are required to reverse the credit. At the same time, $1 million question which I received many times is, if we purchase some inputs and we supply those inputs under warranty, are we required to reverse input tax credit? Answer is yes, because when you are going to supply under warranty, it is free of charge. When it is under warranty free of charge, it is not a supply, and therefore you are not required to pay GST, and therefore you are not eligible to claim input tax credit. Though there will be some other arguments also, which I don't want to discuss right now, but definitely the argument is open for discussion. Now, then, as I said, if a company wants to claim input tax credit, first they check whether they have invoice, second whether goods and services are received, and a third whether those goods and services are covered anywhere in the block credit list. That is section 17 subsection 5, which I discussed right now. However, there are n number of goods and services where we have lot many doubts whether to avail such credits or not. There were so many litigations before GST era in excise and service tax where the officers used to disallow that credit. And in GST, there is no specific provision. So again, the question comes, are we eligible to claim credit on such goods and services? So this is just a indicative list. There are so many inputs, services on which we need lot many discussions. So like for example, bank service. So when a bank is providing any services and when they issue invoice, are we eligible to claim input tax credit? Answer is yes. But here the main question is, if a bank does not provide tax invoice, but they provide bank advice, and in the bank advice itself they may amount, then the question is, can we claim input tax credit on the basis of bank advice? Fortunately, the answer is yes, because if you see section 16, subsection 2, the first point says we should be in possession of tax invoice, debit note, or any duty paying document. So duty paying document in the sense, all the invoice details are mentioned in that particular document. If that is the case, we can claim credit. Next one is air conditioner purchase or maintenance of air conditioner. Now, as a businessman, if we purchase AC for our office, definitely we claim input tax credit because we believe that it is used in the course of my business, because we are using in my office. However, that may not be case in case of GST officers, because I had few arguments with the GST officers on this particular point, because the officer is thinking that air conditioner is not covered in the block list. That does not mean that AC credit is allowed, because this is the first filter. Second filter is we need to check whether the air conditioner is used in the course of my business or furtherance of my business. If yes, then only I can avail input tax credit. Now, for example, when I discussed with the officer, he was of the view that even if you install AC or if you don't install AC, it may not affect your business. Your turnover, your performance is not based on air conditioner, and therefore it is not in the course of business, so credit should not be allowed. But yes, that's a litigative point. Legally speaking, we can claim credit. Same is in case of furniture purchase like chairs, table, sofa, the credit is eligible. In case of pest control service also, officer feels that it is not in the course of business, but still we can correlate and credit may be allowed. Gardening service. So in case of gardening service, is it in the course of business of course, officer will say there is no connection with the business regarding the garden which you maintain, and therefore it shouldn't be allowed. However, I just want to share one small incident. In one of my Japanese client, they had a great garden, and the credit was disallowed in service tax regime. So, what we did, we took interview of the workers, we took interview of employees, and we asked them certain questions. One of the question was how you feel when you walk through the garden. And the reply which we received is like, where after doing a lot of work in the factory premises, when we walk on the garden, we really regain our energy that helps, that increases our efficiency in the manufacturing process. So thereby we could get connect, we could provide a correlation of gardening service and the manufacture. And then I argued the case, and not in the first level, but in the second level, we won the case, and credit got eligible. Then housekeeping service, you can claim credit. Tea, coffee powder, or the machine which you purchase for tea and coffee, whether credit is eligible, answer is no, because when we say food and beverages, credit is not allowed, and it is not mandatory as per any law to have tea, coffee powder or to have tea, coffee machine in the premises. And therefore, if you purchase this, credit is not eligible. Employee recruitment service, you can avail the credit. Event management services. Now this event is management service which we receive is either for customers or for employees. If it is for customers, there is no question, you can avail the credit. But if in case of employees, we have to have a correlation with the business. That if we don't have this event service, it may affect the business. And therefore, if we have such kind of correlation, we can get this credit. Then comes employees' parents' health insurance. This credit is not allowed because it is not mandatory as per any law. Hotel accommodation service. Interestingly, there are so many decisions in service tax regime which says that you can avail input tax credit. However, the GST officers are of the view that this is not related to the business and therefore credit should not be allowed. I just shared one case in my client's case. That is, I was arguing the matter in advanced ruling, Mumbai bench, and there were 3 questions which we asked. Out of 2 questions we received favorable ruling, and for 1 question we received reverse or adverse ruling. And this was that question where we received adverse ruling because we asked the hotel accommodation service credit, and I cannot share few aspects because they were not on record, but the bench, literally the officers, the joint commissioners, they were of the view that if this accommodation service is received by or availed by the company, then only credit is eligible. But this service is availed not by the company, but by the director. And therefore, credit is not eligible because it is for the personal consumption. Even though I shared lot many documents that this director is an employee of the company, so any expenditure incurred on the director is for the company, but their mindset was very clear not to allow this credit. But legally speaking, you can avail this credit. Next one is mobile service bill. It may be mobile service, it may be internet service. Now, because of this COVID-19, many companies might have given internet dongle to the employees to work from home. At the same time, in many cases, these mobile bills are actually paid by the company, which are in the name of companies, and mobiles are given to the employees. The question is, are we eligible to claim input tax credit? I just want to share one of my incidences. In one of my clients, they received notice for disallowal of mobile credit. When I was arguing the matter, the additional commissioner, after argument, he asked me one question. Almost it was a positive argument till 15 minutes. He asked me one question and I was blank. He asked me to produce the mobile invoice copy. I produced that copy. Along with that copy, copy, there was an annexure, which is nothing but a call list, and there were 1,000 calls. The additional commissioner asked me to prove that out of these 1,000 calls, how many calls are being made for business purpose and how many calls are being made for personal purpose. And I had to prove that. I had to prove by documentary evidences, which was not possible because even I don't know about my call list. How can I prove the call list of that person? So I was blank for around 40-45 seconds. Then he said, in that case, he would presume that all the calls were being made for personal purpose and he was supposed to disallow the credit. And then afterwards, I counter-argued that if that is a presumption, then my client was ready to give an affidavit saying that all the calls were being made for business purpose. So I just shifted my ball in his court. Though the affidavit was possible at that point of time. So we got relief, not at that level, but in the next level, we got the relief and we got the input tax credit. But again, the question is, can we claim? Answer is yes, but it is very difficult to prove that how many calls we made for business purpose and how many calls we made for personal purpose. So what I would suggest, as per Rule 42, there is a specific provision that is reversal of 5% in such case. So if you feel that some goods and services used partially for personal purpose, partially for business purpose, you can reduce 5% and you can enjoy remaining 95% without any litigation. Then the question is sanitizer, stand mask, thermometer, guns. Can we claim the credit? Answer is yes. Now, our next point is regarding the new rule that everybody is aware. So I just want to touch those points. That is new rule, that is Rule 36 sub Rule 4, which is inserted from October 2019. Which says that you have to avail input tax credit as per GSTR 2A. So initially it was 120%, then it got reduced to 110% from January 20, and subsequently further reduced to 105% from January 21. The question is, should we claim this excess credit of 10%, 5% or 20%? It is not advisable because we will end up with the reconciliation issue later. Now, the last one is ITC as per books versus GSTR 2A. That is a reconciliation. Now, we have been doing reconciliation since October 2019. The fundamental question, before I start this last slide, the fundamental question is, when the officers are doing GST audit of many of my clients, they are asking the reconciliation for 17-18 and 18-19 also. And when we all know that this particular legal provision inserted from October 2019, how the officers can ask or demand reconciliation for 17-18 and 18-19. Though legally we can fight, but what I understand, these officers, they received instructions from higher authorities and they will ask reconciliation for 17-18 and 18-19 also. Legally, we have points, but still if they ask, and if they disallow any credit, then we have a strong case to defend this particular matter. Now, quickly, I just read out the reasons why there is a difference of GSTR 2A and GSTR 3B. So there might be incorrect GST number, incorrect invoice, wrongly reporting under B2C instead of B2B, or some of the GSTR ones are not filed, or there are some late filers. Others GST number is reported in our GSTR 2A, and typically month-end transaction, that is invoice date is 30th, but we received the goods in the next month. So these are some of the reasons why we there is a gap between 2A and 3B. Further, sometimes we treat purchase return as sale. there might be impact of debit credit note, because of which our two-way is not matching with the books. And there are certain entries which we do not have any GL, any creditor's name in the books of accounts, but those invoices are appearing in GSTR 2A, and therefore the credit does not match. And of course, ineligible ITC reversal in 3B but not in books. Now this is typical reconciliation part of books versus 2A, because we await some credit as per 3B, as per 2A. However, if some credit is not eligible, then we are required to reverse. We reverse that credit in GSTR 3B. However, we do not reverse, we do not give impact in the books of accounts, and therefore there will be a gap. Now, these are the typical reasons which I observed while preparing GSTR 9 and GSTR 9C. So, as I mentioned earlier in my earlier slide, availment of excess 5% is not at all advisable. And the last aspect, which the question which I raised regarding 2A or 2B. So here I would say that GSTR 2A is as per section 16, whereas GSTR 2B is for a particular month that we all know. And therefore, I strongly recommend that we should refer ITC as per GSTR 2A and not as per GSTR 2B. And for this, we have a legal backup to refer GSTR 2A and not GSTR 2B. So that's it from me. There are so many things in input tax grid, but because of shortage of time, we are restricted to this particular aspect. So that's it from me. We will discuss the question answers very shortly. Now I request Chandrasekhar to take it further.
Hey, thank you, Manas. Komal or Tilak, can you just confirm if you can hear me clearly?
Yes, good to go.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, hello everyone, and thanks for joining in today. Manas, thank you so much for walking us through the nuances and nitty-gritties of ITC. I'm sure that this must have been very informative, and I'm sure there must be a lot of follow-up questions as well. So we'll make sure that there is enough time to address as many questions as possible. And of course, feel free to reach out to us in case we get short on time. I'm just going to very quickly cover what we provide as Avalara as part of the India GST solution, and how we can help you with your compliance journey in general. So once we do that, the last part is, of course, just a Q&A section. So Avalara GST solution, which you're seeing on your screen right now, very simply put, is a conduit between your system that you may have and the government IRP or the NIC. So imagine if you are on your ERP system, and if you have your seller transactions listed over there, we provide the ability for you to connect to our system through different means. So you could use API to connect and transmit transactions in real time, or you could leverage an SFTP method, a secure file transmission protocol method, in which case what you need to do is prepare your invoices in a template and just simply push that and upload it into a folder that we will give you access to. And of course, you also would be able to leverage our UI too. Now, once you do that, right, what do we provide you? Avalara GST as a whole, it combines the power of all possible compliance needs under one roof. So right from your e-invoicing journey and your e-way bill journey, we help you basically manage your business process accordingly. Then it naturally extends to providing you support for returns and doing reconciliation, a lot of which becomes very important when you manage your input tax credits as well. So when you think about e-invoicing, we consume the data that you send us, and we do a certain level of data sanitization we ensure that your data is in a format that is consumable by us and the government. And we create the e-invoice JSON, which the government portal, the IRP, is able to basically consume. We take that, we forward it to the government portal, and we generate the IRNs and the QR codes that you need, and send it back to your system in a format that is consumable again to you, so that you could update your invoices with the IRN and the QR code and be compliant. We provide support for both B2B and B2C in e-invoices. Additionally, of course, though we're not an e-invoice print solution, we do have the ability to print out and white label a basic and government compliant e-invoice PDF that you could keep as a record, or of course share with your end users, your buyers for that matter. On top of all this, of course, you could also automate your e-way bill process. So along with your e-invoice, if your process needs e-way bill to be generated at the same time, we allow for that support. Or of course, separately, if your process of e-invoice and e-way bills are separate and they're disconnected, we are able to do that too. Now, once that is done, we also provide you, various custom reports and standard reports. We have our own reports dashboard, and we have a reconciliation engine through which we are constantly working on, new reconciliation reports that you would need to make life easier for yourself. Now, here's a quick snippet of how our UI looks like. So the dashboard is pretty intuitive. It gives you information about your usage that you're using across e-invoicing, e-way bills, the returns that we're managing through the product, and various other pieces of information that will be good for you. We also have pre-built and custom reports that you could leverage. And this is an area that we are continuing to invest in. So for the next few quarters, our focus is really on building really value-added reports and reconciliation that you as a business would find very useful. Finally, of course, just showing the e-invoice portal, of course, in a little bit more detail. This is how it looks like, right? It's a single intuitive interface, not just to manage your invoice, but also your e-way bills, your reports and reconciliation. And you could, of course, create e-invoices on the UI separately, but everything can really get connected over here. And from here, you can choose to manage generating e-way bills for those e-invoices. You could generate PDFs that you need, any other kind of actions that you really need to take. So you could also leverage the Avalara UI. This is something that we would love to take forward and discuss, further with you. Should you be interested, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to engage with you and learn more about, your processes, your areas of concern and the problems, and how we could potentially help you, partner with you and help you basically address those problems. Thanks. Tilak, over to you.
Thanks, Chandrasekhar. So we have some questions from the audiences, Vimal, Maheshwari, Venkatji, and Ravindranath, Karthik, Yuvraj, Saurabh. Thank you for your questions. I will request Manas to take it up.
Yes, Tilak. So basically the first question which I can see in front of me is, please quote the circular on this two-way recredit. So this is basically availment and reversal or recredit. So this circular is pertaining to service tax regime. The number of the circular is 990/14. I just trying to recollect the year. It is 2014. So 990/14/2014, where in the circular it is specifically mentioned that once you avail credit, and if you reverse without using, then there is no time limit to avail that credit in case of recredit. So this is a circular. If you want to read further, you can, as I said, you can go to the article which is published on TaxGuru. There I have discussed in detail. The next question is, under section 17 subsection 5, what is the logic behind motor vehicle up to capacity of 13 passengers? Now this is the, I guess we may need to discuss with ask to the law ministers, because normally law is based on logic, but there are certain provisions for which there is no logic. One of the provisions I can discuss right now is regarding if you avail any legal service from CA, Chartered Accountant, then that service falls under forward category, and that CA is supposed to charge GST. But if the same service is received from a lawyer, then that service falls under reverse charge, and the lawyer is not supposed to charge GST. It is the service recipient, the customer, who is supposed to pay GST on behalf of lawyer. Now there is no logic behind this. Literally, when I discuss this, when I asked this question in one of my hearing, I was discussing the case with the Commissioner Appeals, and I asked the same question. So what's the logic behind this? He said, Manas, even I don't know logic. Maybe the provision which was introduced at that point of time, our finance minister was Mr. M. Chidambaram, who himself is a Supreme Court lawyer. Then Mr. Arun Jaitley again is a Supreme Court lawyer, and therefore maybe because of that, the lawyers are exempt from GST or the service tax. So law is based on logic, but in some cases the logic doesn't work. So why 13 passengers? There is no specific logic. It is just a number. Normally, what I feel is credit is allowed if the passenger capacity is more than 13, just because it will be used for business purpose only. The chances of using a vehicle having more than 13 passengers, the chances of using for non-business is far, far less, and therefore that could be the logic. The next question is, if we as a supplier have classified a vendor as B2C and properly filed the returns, can our customer avail credit when his registration on the date of billing was valid? Now, this is typical common scenario when we observe while doing reconciliation. In many of my clients' case, what we have observed that since those invoices, the purchase invoices are not shown or reflected anywhere in GSTR 2A, so we are not claiming that credit. However, when we communicate to the concerned supplier, he says, we have already filed returns, we have already paid GST, so all the conditions are satisfied. But the only thing is, instead of mentioning B2B, they have mentioned in B2C. That's the only thing. Now the question is, since they have classified in B2C, I could not see that invoice in my GSTR 2A. The question is, can I claim input tax credit? I would say answer is yes. Legally, you can claim input tax credit. I tell you why. This is because law CGST Act nowhere mentions about the form GSTR 2A or GSTR 2B. Section 16 subsection 2 talks about 6 conditions. One of the condition is the supplier has paid GST and the supplier has filed a return. As I said, since you have paid GST, one condition is satisfied. Second, have you filed GST return, which means have you filed GSTR 3B, which is mentioned in section 39? Answer is yes. If all these conditions are satisfied, the customer should claim or can claim input tax credit. Now here, to save from litigation, I would suggest that you may give a declaration or clarification on the letterhead that we have supplied to you these goods against these invoices. However, while reporting in GSTR 2A, we have reported in B2C instead of B2B, and we have paid GST. So this one single declaration will suffice the purpose, and it will save from litigation. The next question is accounting service through CA, RCM covered or not? So as I mentioned a couple of minutes back, if you receive any services from CA, that is not under reverse charge mechanism. But if you receive services from lawyer, then only those services are covered under reverse charge mechanism. The next question is employee group insurance policy taken by companies mandated as per law? Now, it depends upon nature of business. So maybe based on that, I can answer this question. Normally, in case of state ESI Act, normally there is a provision which mandate the companies to have insurance policy. But again, there are other filters also. So once I understand the nature of your business, and then if that state ESI is applicable to you, then probably you can claim that credit. The next question is, we have GST only in Bangalore and Hyderabad. We have a pan-India presence with 500 employees. If we get bills of all the regions, can we avail input tax credit in Karnataka? Now, here what I understand, you have two GST numbers, one for Karnataka and one for Hyderabad or Andhra Pradesh. So now, if you receive services from other cities, other states, then mostly it will be IGST. So long as in all those transactions your GST number is mentioned and IGST is mentioned, you can claim that credit. This is what the question which I understand right now. However, if you have any city, any state where you receive invoice in that particular state or in that particular city only, then you have an option to avail or obtain a separate registration that is called input service distributor, and then you can distribute the credit. Next question is, do we need to disclose in GSTR 1 or reverse the credit in 3B in case of free of cost supply? Okay, so in case of free of cost supply, as I said, it is not a supply as per section 7 of the GST Act, and therefore no need to issue any tax invoice. So if that is the case, there is no question to report this free of cost supply in GSTR 1. Now the question is, are we required to reverse credit? Answer is yes. That credit you have to reverse in GSTR 3B, and that too in a particular column against other reversal. You have two options, either to reverse in 3B or you can file GST DRC 03 and you can reverse the credit. I'll just take last two questions now. We are in pharma industry. We need to draw up QC sample as a mandatory requirement as per Drugs and Cosmetics Act before commercial sale. The said QC samples are destroyed during the course of testing. Whether we need to reverse ITC on the said inputs used in QC good. Yes, it's a litigation issue, and when I represented this issue with the government through chamber, we are of the view that credit should be allowed, because ultimately that is used in the manufacturing process, and that too you cannot sell in the market. You have to destroy, and therefore after some approvals and all. So I personally feel credit should be allowed. And the last question I take, where we can get more information about GST and ITC for free? But definitely, Google is the best search engine and the best teacher in both the ways, because you can read from both the sides. But yes, it's always better to discuss, because I personally reading discussion will help us to understand the aspects from practical point of view. Just last question I take, and we can close. impact of change in GST rate from 12% to 5% on supply. So basically there is no notification issued as of now. So we have to wait. Maybe we receive, we are expecting notification by today or tomorrow morning. Yes, over to you, Tilak.
Thank you, Manas. All right, so we still have some questions to go. We'll make sure to reach out to the ones. We have Raju Kevarji, Venkat, Chaitanya, Rohit, Ravindranathji, Yuvraj and Karthik. So thank you for reaching out, guys. If any of your questions are still not taken up, we'll make sure to reach out to you in the next 30 minutes and you'll receive an email with the answers to your questions. Time to wrap up for the day. It was lovely having you and thank you so much for your time. Have a nice rest of your day. Thank you.